Hey, good Friday morning, everyone. It is meteorologist Jacob Dickey here. Wanted to spend some time and get to chat with you a little bit about what to expect with this upcoming winter weather event here this weekend. Starting to see some more clarity in the forecast and in the details. And so we'll spend some time kind of evaluating what we're looking at, what we're expecting here, and some of the things that we'll continue to look forward to. So, as you're logging on here, I always love to see where you are watching from. And then remember, at the very end, I always like to take some time to answer some questions. So my guess is we'll take about 10, 15 minutes, probably get through the forecast, explain things a little more, maybe even a little less than that. We'll see. And then at the end there, we'll have some time for questions. But go ahead and let me know, where are you watching from? Always love to see where our viewers are checking in. So thanks for being here on this Friday morning here across central Illinois. So first off, that forecasting timeline, where are we sitting on this? We've been working our way through here. We watched It's Possible, looking more likely, starting to see those plans. Now we're getting to the point where we're able to see how we should react here. And that is something that we'll be keeping an eye on moving forth. We're understanding those finer details. What are the little nuances and caveats to the forecast that we have to keep an eye on? And we've had some questions about those, and those questions are getting a little more clarity from us here at this point, something that we are watching and seeing. Do have a winter storm watch in effect for most all of the area. It does not include Livingston, Ford, Iroquois, or Benton counties. I don't think it's going to be extended that far north. The way that these alerts are issued is you get a watch, and then you get either a winter weather advisory or a winter storm warning. Both of those are considered an upgrade. You can think of it like in the springtime, we have a tornado watch. Okay, we got to watch out, severe weather possible. It doesn't always necessarily equate to a tornado warning, but I do think that a lot of us will see a winter storm warning come in for this. Others of us to the north might get a winter weather advisory. That change would probably happen either overnight tonight or first thing Saturday morning, I think. We might see it happen this afternoon. We'll see, but not quite sure what the timing will be. These are issued from the National Weather Service office in Lincoln, Chicago, St. Louis, and places like that. Big winter storm coming on through. We've seen this coming. There's a big system here, and it seems like for the most part we continue to stay mainly on the snowy side of the system here, down to our south. A freezing rain ice storm event, southern Illinois, southern Indiana into Kentucky, and then you get some rain through Tennessee, and then south of that, even down into Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. They will be dealing with some severe weather down there from this particular storm. Very powerful storm system, and that's something that we have to watch. It does look like as we get to Monday morning, it is exiting our region then, on its way out, hit focused primarily on Sunday here for that. Really, if you followed the impact forecast for us here, we're not talking specific numbers in this. We're not talking amounts and things like that. We are looking at impact forecasting. This hasn't changed a whole lot, where we've highlighted the greatest confidence for the most impacts, the most amount of snow, and then that change north here. That continues to be this zone here. I have not moved that since the beginning, really, here. Continues to be from areas south of Springfield into Coles County and south that I think have the highest potential for impacts. As we get to Champaign-Urbana and north, we do have some cleaning up to do a little bit here. We've tightened our impact gradient. It seems like that somewhere in this region is going to be a tight cutoff of that snow with northward extent here. Sometimes you see that snow where it's heavy snow and over 100 miles, it slowly lightens up. When I'm talking a tight gradient, it could be a 20, 30 mile difference. Maybe Champaign gets a good healthy dose of snow, and we go up the road to Gilman, Onarga, and there's little no snow up there. That's what I mean by a tight gradient, from a lot to a little in a short distance. That does seem to be becoming more of a reality here in areas north of I-74. Where exactly that ends up remains to be seen. But when that happens, obviously your impacts are going to go down. So we are illustrating that up here from that with that tight cutoff, that tight gradient with the snow there. This still seems like a lock for high impact event for places like Taylorville, Effingham, Mattoon, Charleston, Cumberland County, Shelbyville, down by Vandalia, anywhere south of Effingham into southern Illinois, primarily because of the snow, but also as we get further to the south and into southern Illinois, we're talking about the ice potential down there. When you talk about the amounts of snow and the amounts of ice, the bar is a lot lower for ice to cause impact. So this is probably a high. We may go even up here on the scale if we were further down into southern Illinois from Effingham south. So we're going to watch that, keep things closely here, keep an eye on that closely for us. So this, again, impact forecast, that's why we like to lead with this. How does this impact your normal day-to-day your normal day-to-day life. And that's one of the ways that we look at that. To give you an idea of what that looks like on a graphic here, we talk about very low, low, medium, high, and very high. Sometimes people ask what that means. What is that? And these are some of those things that we're looking for. So when we're getting into that high category here, we're talking about hazardous travel. Yes, power outage is possible. That is dependent, of course, if it's ice, blowing snow, there's factors and things that are there. And if there's cold, you're sometimes talking about those dangerous cold temperatures. If we were to jump up, we're now from hazardous to dangerous travel, outages more likely, extreme cold likely. If this gets upgraded, it would probably be south of a line from Taylorville, Mattoon, Charleston, where confidence is greatest. We'll see. We're not making that call yet. But as you get further down the scale here, the other direction, you can see we go from hazardous travel, slick spots likely, slick spots possible, stray slick spots out there. That's a way to assess the impact scale. So I'll go back once more to impact, and you can kind of see here when we're talking about that high, we think that the hazardous travel conditions there are going to be in areas that are in red from Springfield through Champaign southward, where we get that snow. And the greatest potential for that does still seem to be this area right here. That would include Litchfield, Taylorville, Shelbyville, south of Sullivan, Effingham, Toledo, Casey, Greenup, Mattoon, Charleston, Marshall, down into Olney, places like that, Robinson, where we would see the greatest confidence for the most impacts from this particular storm. And that's been consistent for us here in the last several days. No real changes from that. Let's walk you through future track, and you can see a couple of things. One, watch for the pink colors here to show up kind of down here. And number two, if you're from Lincoln to Champaign to Danville and north, watch that tight cutoff that shows up on there on some of our future track graphics here. You can see here's 8:30 in the morning. Snow falling for areas south of I-72. Some of us may have to wait a little bit for that snow. As we go into the afternoon, you'll see that snow lift a little bit more here to get places like Lincoln, Champaign, and Danville. 12 o'clock, heavy snow still falling. Taylorville, Mattoon, Charleston, Effingham, I-70 corridor. And then we'll see Sunday afternoon. See some of that purple down there? That's freezing rain and sleet. It kind of wants to lift north a little bit. The question is, how far north can it lift? That's at 5 p.m. We've still got snow along I-74 points to the south. There hasn't been much. Pontiac, Watseka, really not a great deal of concern for high impacts at this point for Livingston, Ford, Iroquois counties, at least the northern half for sure. That tight gradient can play a role, and we could still have some slick spots, certainly. But you've seen that tight, sharp cutoff from heavy snow to really not much at all set up there. Something else I want to point out, and this is one reason why we have not gone like some other places towards some of those huge numbers here. See this pocket right here Sunday evening? There's some dry air that the system may try and pull in, which could briefly, it went by a little quick there, we'll get it to 7, 8 o'clock. It could briefly bring down the intensity and even eliminate some of that snow as we go into Sunday evening. And if that happens, you're not going to see some of those totals that certain sites and places have advertised. And that's why we've been a little more conservative with our numbers, because some of the concerns for that. And then there are questions into Sunday evening, Sunday night. This particular run of Future Track has been showing that heavy snow right back over our area. Some guidance has pulled that a little more south and left some of these areas north. So that's another thing that we're going to watch, is how does that band to the backside as we go into Sunday night and Monday morning affect things for us. So our snowfall forecast, there's really not much different from what we have said last night. And really, this is about what we've been anticipating. When we go back to the probability-based forecasting, we were at 80% that we would see a band of 6 inches plus. That still seems to be the case. We were at 30% chance of hitting that. We were at a 30% chance of that 12-inch mark. I don't know if we make it. We could still get there, but there's just enough uncertainty to where we don't want to go really high and have to pull back. I think that's just not great. You know, you sit at home and you look at a number. If you see 8 to 18 inches of snow on a map, you're going to immediately look at the 18 inches. If you get 8 inches, that forecast was accurate, but it wasn't very useful, right? There's a huge difference between 8 and 18 inches as far as a number goes. From an impacts perspective, though, once you get to a certain point, your impacts are high, right? And then we see that sleet and snow come on through. So this is our current forecast. I'll talk you through it a little bit. There's that band of 6 to 10, which seems still likely here. Springfield, Taylorville, south of Decatur, south maybe Douglas, Coles, Cumberland counties, and Paris and Marshall, places like that. Once we get north here, you can see that tight gradient. In Champaign County, we go from that very edge where that pinkish color is to purple to blue to turquoise pretty quickly here. That tight gradient showing up where we may even tighten that a little bit more as more data comes out this afternoon. So if you're in northern Livingston, Florida, Iroquois County, I think you're going to be pretty okay from this particular system at this point. We're still watching that high impact area. We have questions on that gradient in this particular area here. The other thing is you'll see on the south side, see how we go from pink to purple to blue. We're going 6 to 10, 5 to 8, 3 to 6 south here. One of those reasons is because questions about sleet. How does the sleet particularly mix in? How does the freezing rain particularly mix in? And as we look here, we'll flip over to our ice and sleet forecast. That is the zone that we're going to have to watch for sleet and freezing rain. Still some uncertainty on that. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how much sleet and freezing rain falls exactly in Effingham Points to the south, but if you get a couple of inches of sleet, you trade that and you get 6 inches less of snow there. Sleet will really cut down on those snow totals. But you are also still going to have high impacts. You're putting ice on roads. You get a little bit of water on those roads. You're putting ice crystals there. That is going to freeze. And so whether it's snow or sleet down here doesn't change the fact that I still expect high impacts to travel in that area of the world. And so that is something that we're watching really closely here. What I do want to do is talk real quick about the wind, and let me pull up a graphic for that here. That is something we haven't spent a lot of time on, but it does seem like as we get the wind pulled in here, the wind is something else where going to have to watch to see what happens, particularly, I think, Sunday afternoon into Sunday night. This is today. We go into Saturday and Sunday. Notice as we go into Sunday afternoon, the low pressure now is passing to our south. We can get a tight gradient on the backside. This does not meet the criteria for blizzard conditions, but it still certainly can bring blowing and drifting of snow. To have a blizzard, you either have to have heavy snow falling or a lot of snow blowing, and you have to have visibility under a quarter mile and 35-mile-per-hour wind gusts or higher. And so we're not quite to that blizzard criteria, but still you get 20, 30-mile-an-hour winds with the snow that's a little bit fluffier. You get that, it can still blow around. And so some blowing and drifting is certainly there, particularly on those east-west roads. As we go into the day on Monday, notice the wind comes down then by Monday afternoon. So Sunday afternoon through early Monday morning is when we'll see how much wind we get. That could cause some blowing and drifting, and that could lead to some issues Monday. But hopefully Monday is a day where crews can get out and get caught up in things for us here. Let's take a look at the state. I know we got some folks from all around. This map hasn't really changed a whole lot either. I posted it yesterday, maybe the day before, and it'll pop up here in a second. You can see where we talk about the most likely precip type. I tell you what, really worried about Southern Illinois. I-60, you get down to Carbondale, Marion, you get down maybe even Mount Vernon there. Maybe as far north as Salem, US 50 here. That area is where I think there's a potential for a high impact ice storm or freezing rain event. And the issue is down there is while they may get rain, freezing rain, sleet first, they could still get a burst of snow on top of that. That just is a disaster for roads. So really worried about some potentially very high impacts for the southern part of the state. That does creep into some of our viewing area along the I-70 corridor. We still have our favored heavy snow zone. Somewhere in there is where that heaviest band of snow sets up. Can it still lift a little north? Sure. I think that window is starting to close a little bit. And we even tightened that northern edge here where we have some higher snow amounts possible and then light snow possible. The northern part of the state may even miss out on this entirely. So that is something that we have seen a little bit change as confidence improves. But for the most part, those greatest impacts really haven't moved a whole lot. And it's down in Southern Illinois, some of those hills and places like that, you put a little ice down there, it's going to be a problem for places like that here across the region. All right, let's talk about the cold real quick on the backside, and then we'll finish with maybe a more regional look at things. But when we talk about the cold, I do want to say it does get cold next week. Wind chill values are likely to fall after Sunday. The minimum values, that would be nighttime and in the morning. We could see it dip down here, potentially 10 below zero, maybe 20 below zero as well as we get into next week. And so some cold air is coming in the backside. And that is a problem when we look at our actual air temperatures here. The low temperatures, for instance, let me get the lows up real fast. Give me a second to find that particular graphic. Here's our overnight lows. When we look at this, those overnight lows after Monday, see how they drop down here? Salt and brine doesn't work as well here. So there would likely still be slick spots. Usually the interstates can get cleared a lot easier. IDOT has a little bit more manpower, more resources compared to Maple Street in your hometown or places like that. I think a lot of our small towns, a lot of our cities are going to have slushy, snowy, icy roads still continuing through much of next week. Some of those rural roads where blowing and drifting happens, some of the interstates might get cleared a little bit better here, but that's what I anticipate. Still could be some slick spots, don't get me wrong, especially when the overnight lows drop down there. Salt and brine simply just does not work as well for us here in the region. Let's take a look at travel delays. Some of you have asked questions about, hey, what about, where I'm traveling? I got to go somewhere. I got to go up to Chicago. The travel impacts, the focus is only on travel, and we go from none, minor, moderate to major. As we look into late Saturday and early Sunday, here comes that snow. I-70 corridor west, not a great route from St. Louis Sunday morning. And then you can see even I-70 here into central Illinois. The southern half of the state really gets the biggest impacts from this. And you can see that tight gradient showing up even here on this particular. We go from high to moderate to minor pretty quickly over a short distance on that northern edge there. More snow, more ice. We go to late Sunday then. You see those worst impacts are exiting. Still going to have some problems out there. And then even into Monday morning, still have issues down south, but seeing some improvement, at least from falling snow. We'll see what sort of residual impacts are on the roads. And this then makes it towards the Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Delmarva area as we head into early Monday as it exits. There still could be some snow on the backside falling too, and that wind may be a factor. So we'll watch, but you kind of get an idea about what is coming with that particular system. So some final thoughts here. And if you're joining in late, that's okay. I'll post this video. You can go back and rewatch the thing here. Still very much applicable. And if you have any questions, start throwing those in the comments as well. I'll take a minute to answer those. Final details, plan and prepare. This isn't a historic storm, but it is still a high impact storm. And for some folks, because of the cold afterwards, that's why they want to prepare a little bit more. Who wants to go outside when the high temperature is 10? It feels like 10 below zero, right? Nobody wants to do that. That's not fun. So that's maybe one consideration. If it wasn't 10 below next week, then okay, we get 6 to 10 inches of snow in some parts of central Illinois. Yeah, that's a doozy, but we can handle that and get it cleared out in a couple of days. That cold, though, does extend those impacts a little bit more. So the three things we're going to be looking at this point. On the north side of this, what's that hard cutoff with snow look like? From I-74 north seems to be the best chance to get that. What I mean is we go from a lot of snow to a little snow to not much to really none in a short distance. Where that settles in. To the south along I-70, how does freezing rain and sleet mix in with that? How does that impact snow total specifically? That does not change the impacts. If you get a little more freezing rain and sleet, you might even have a worse time than if you got all clean snow out of this because that freezing rain and sleet potential down by I-70, you put some wind in there, you got some ice and power lines and trees, that can cause problems and power outages. So we are watching that potential here in the next 36 hours. And then, of course, the wind, we've got to watch Sunday afternoon through Monday morning to see two things. One, how the blowing wind affects the snow, pushes it around. Does that blowing and drifting take on a bigger problem? And number two, does that wind affect places that maybe get a little more freezing rain, sleet down towards I-70? That is the bulk of my information. If you have questions, let me know, and we'll answer those. This is perhaps the most consistent, the most reliable forecast here is the impacts forecast. When we look at this map here, this has not changed. You can see here winter impacts. Our greatest concern for impacts have consistently been here from, say, Springfield, Decatur, south of Champaign, south of Danville. And then we have tightened it up a little bit here with the highest concern, including Taylorville, Mattoon, Charleston, Effingham, Shelbyville, Cumberland County, down towards Marshall, places south of I-70 as well for the greatest impact. So that's something that we are watching very closely here, keeping an eye on for those particular impacts. And whether I know some folks in Effingham are saying, if I only get 6 inches of snow, or 4 inches of snow even, you busted the forecast. This forecast will not, because if you only get 4 inches of snow in Effingham, that means you got a 1/4 inch of ice and a couple inches of sleet out of it instead. good luck with the roads down there. I think we all know how those I-70 drivers have been. And the other thing, too, is on the interstates, we've got drivers coming in from out of state, semi-traffic. They're not aware necessarily. They're not like you at home watching the WCIA forecast, keeping up with us. They're coming from Minneapolis. They're coming from Dallas, driving through, and by no fault of their own, they just get caught up in things. So that's something to consider as well. But I-70, it seems like, has just had some problems here recently. So again, that's what we're looking at for those winter impacts. Highest to the south, lesser and lesser to the north, maybe even very low impacts, far northern Ford, Livingston, Iroquois counties, places like Cabery, Clifton, Donovan, Dwight, Streeter, places like that may even miss out in snow. And that could come a little further south as we tighten the confidence on where things end up here with that northern edge in this area. That is what we're looking at from an impacts perspective. I'm going to go back through a little bit and find some of those questions if you have any questions. And we can kind of take a look at things here. We've got here, going to visit my children in Godfrey, Illinois. They live in Charleston. Yeah, I tell you what, if you go from Charleston down to St. Louis, really, I think St. Louis is going to be a problem. They're going to have problems with the ice. That's a big concern down there. So that's either come back early, head back Saturday night, or stay with them a couple of days. However, you get into that ice down southern Illinois, there could be some big problems there as well. So you might be more comfortable at home. Yvette asking, can I call her boss? I work till 1 a.m. Monday morning. What time do you start work is the real question. Can you actually get there to work? That's the bigger question I think we would ask for that. Nicole is rubbing it in. Everyone, remember this. She's saying it's sunny and beautiful in Tallahassee. They live down in Florida. I tell you, it's going to be cool in Florida. Some of the folks in Florida, they start complaining when high temperatures are in like the 50s and 60s down there. And so it'll be cooler. But if you lived in Illinois, you can have that happen. Georgia asking, is it possible the storm will shift south enough to miss Champaign? There is a chance that can happen. I think we at least get a little snow out of it, whether we end up with 2-3 inches versus 6, 7, 8 inches right now. That's a tough forecast to nail down here for places like Champaign, Danville, off towards Clinton, maybe even Monticello, like right in that area. I mean, that is such a tight edge on the northern side where trying to message specifically, in 30 miles in Champaign County, it's possible you could get 6, 7, 8 south and 1 north. I mean, a very tight gradient could set up from that, depending on how that low moves. We're kind of watching for those details as we move on through. Timing for Springfield, this starts Sunday morning. As early as 4, 5, 6 in the morning, snow arrives. Through the day, by midday, things probably are pretty rough out there, and they continue to worsen into Sunday night with those impacts. So we're watching this to arrive Sunday morning in the area. Bloomington in the 3 to 6 inch range, it's a really tight gradient. And if we look at this here, I did pull it down. We'll get the snow map back up a little bit because I know there's some questions. How much exactly? And saying the exact amount for every single small town is near impossible. But you can see how tight that gradient is. You go from Clinton, where we've got the purple now, to Bloomington. I mean, that's a short distance. That's a short drive there where we go 3 colors based on our scale there. You're kind of in that edge of the 2 to 4 and 3 to 6. So you might land somewhere in the middle, 3 to 5. That could be a little high. What's going to happen is this gradient between the white and the purple is going to shrink even more. And that gradient, we're 4 colors in the scale here. That could be 20, 25 mile difference, just a very small difference that happens with that. So that's something where the messaging on that is really challenging, and it makes it where people can say really easily, you missed the forecast, you got it wrong. But we're trying to advertise that there's going to be that tight gradient here on the northern side as that confidence improves. And obviously, when you get less snow, you have less impact. So that is something that we are keeping an eye on there. Deborah saying people can't drive with less than 1 inch of snow. Imagine 5 inches. Yeah, you're right. At a certain point, it's too much snow. People forget. It does seem like that if we get 5 inches in Champaign, let's say, that's the biggest snow since February of 2022. And so that is something where, we haven't had bigger events in a little while here. Sometimes that happens, right? It's been since February of 2022. Some folks have been sharing raw model totals over 20 inches. I think that's just crazy. That's never been a realistic consideration. The biggest 2-day winter storms in central Illinois, at many of our observation sites, 2-day snow totals have been 13 to 18 or 19 inches. Those are records. So to see 20 to 25, whenever that pops up, we're always like, we don't think that. And so these numbers are what we came out with. They did seem a little conservative. We always felt like if needed, we can bring these up some more. We'll see if that happens. But starting off a little more conservative and not having to drop numbers by 6 inches, if I come out and say, hey, we're going to get 18 inches in Taylorville, and then the next day, actually, we're in the 8 to 12. See the problem with that? If we're 12 to 18, everyone looks at 18. I know everyone's looking 6 to 10, and they're thinking 10. It's a range, right? Half a foot to 10 inches, 6 to 10, somewhere in that area is what we expect. So 7 inches in Mattoon, or 9 inches or 10 inches. I mean, that's the forecast number that carries on through there. So that's kind of what we're watching with that zone. And something to consider is that most people look at the upper number. And so by being a little conservative, if we get an 11-inch report in Shelbyville, I'll be real happy with this forecast. If we came out and said 12 to 18 and we had 11 inches in Shelbyville, y'all would be mad. Just saying how it is. It happens every time when we get a winter storm coming our way. And so as expected from a probability perspective, I said, hey, I think there's going to be some 6-inch or higher totals. There you are. Could we still get an area that has a foot? Sure. Does that seem like a widespread problem? No. But you tell me the difference between, a couple of inches. That's not really a big difference, is it? If you're 10 or 12, your impacts are still high, which is why we like to lead with that impact-based forecasting for these scenarios here. Let's see, kind of Elizabeth asking, time for snow on Sunday. I need a grocery store run. If you're going to the grocery store, I get it. Everyone's always like, and there's been a lot of folks that have been, the internet has a lot of information and you can find whatever you want. And there have been some folks who have been sharing 12, 18, 24 inches of snow in central Illinois. Please understand that you got to find someone you trust. And for many of you, I appreciate that you've trusted us here with the way we forecast, the way we approach things. If you find a random page, it's Billy Bob's Basement Forecast or City A Weather Center or, the Illinois Extreme Weather Authority, like that. Ask yourself, who's running that page? Who's behind that? Do you have a face to that? If we say this and we get 2 inches in Taylorville, I eat crow. Those Facebook pages, when they say 24 inches, they go back into obscurity, they disappear, and people in Taylorville then come after me and say, you said 24 inches. No, we didn't. We said this. But because all that information is out there, always consider where you're getting your information from. And for many of you, I know you trust us, you believe in us, and we appreciate that so much here at WCIA for you guys to trust the forecast that we provide. And I know that, if we are wrong, we eat it. We own it, right? We have had that happen before, but for the most part, I feel very confident in the last number of years with how we've forecasted, and specifically because we've gone towards impact-based forecasting over a specific number, especially earlier. 5 inches of snow, 10 inches of snow, road's going to be bad. People don't know how to drive in it. So, that's a high impact event, right? That's my rant for the day. Let's see what else here. I could probably rant more if you want me to. Where's the cutoff line for ice in the St. Louis metro? That cutoff is really close. I'm talking Southern Illinois. There could be some problems down there, some issues. Stephanie asking, when will this start? She's got a business at the Carlinville exit down here in Montgomery County off of 55. We're talking 4, 5, 6 a.m. The snow starts, but it seems to probably really escalate quickly after 8 a.m. Down there. Jeff is saying, IDOT already laying down liquid salt here in Springfield. Great. That is good news. We need that to happen. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing what they know. That is good news to get ahead of things with this. And IDOT, for the most part, they cover the main interstates. But you talk about a city like Decatur or Champaign, how many small roads, how many side streets they have. That is a harder task with, less people and a lot more mileage to cover. So you can think of it that way as well, where your local side street, your little, Maple Street, Birch Street, 3rd Street, those are probably going to be rough for a lot longer than, say, I-72, I-74. That tends to happen every winter event. Doesn't mean it won't be bad on the interstates during and especially after, but that's something that we have to watch. Let's see what else. Flora, Illinois to Champaign Monday morning. That's going to be a rough trip. Flora's down here, down south. You got to go through, you probably have ice down there, and then you got to go through the heavier band of snow to get here. So that's probably going to be a rough trip for that. Kaylee asking about ETA. We're looking at Sunday. It arrives Sunday morning, 6 to 10 a.m., moving into our area, probably having heavy snow in parts of the area through all day Sunday into Sunday night. Medical clinics be closed. Hospitals stay open. Medical clinics, I don't really have an estimate on that. You want to reach out to your local medical clinics and ask them. That's probably my best advice for you. And then another question, the places with high impacts. If you got high impacts, will there be big drifts? If you're in this area where you got, more than a few inches of snow, that blowing snow can cause drifting if it's 3 inches or 9 inches. Obviously, you'll have a lot more drifting in 9 inches, but there certainly can be some issues that are there that we can keep an eye out here. Largely dependent on IDOT County Highway Departments. The good news is this is a one-day hit from snow. So once the snow stops Monday morning, as we go into Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, that gives them time to catch up. The wind doesn't seem to be as much of a problem. Still be some blowing and drifting, some of that in the country, in the rural areas. But with the cold, it could still linger. We certainly expect Monday to be a rougher day. Things probably look a little better Tuesday. Probably look a little better by Wednesday. You can kind of see that. But that is something to consider was, a lot of it is dependent on IDOT versus township versus city versus county, things of that. That's a hodgepodge mess of jurisdictions to decide who cleans what, but they'll be all working super hard. And also, if you happen to be out, you see a snowplow, back off. Give them some space. That's something I want to say as well. Charleston Living asking who gets the storm tracker this weekend. We'll see. We are talking about things, planning it out. We'll see what happens, but we'll keep you updated on that. Yeah, Phil asking up in Kankakee. Yeah, most of the storm is going to stay south of you here. Keep an eye on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if up in Kankakee, come Monday morning, you're like, what snow? That very much could be a possibility for this. Lisa asking about when it would be done. Monday morning is going to be really rough from a travel perspective, and especially down in the Effingham area. If you get that ice mixed in, that could take a while for roads to clear off with conditions as cold as they are on the backside. So that certainly is something that can happen. And so sorry for your loss. Monday morning does not look friendly. The snow could exit quickly, but I tend to think Monday morning's conditions still are going to be really rough there across Effingham County. Christopher asking about power outages. I mean, yeah, there can always be a spot or two. Typically, when it's a clean snow, the risk of power outages is lower. When you look at ice and sleet, and we're talking about this area down here, that's maybe where the concern is a little higher. How high that goes, though, does depend on how much actually falls. And so that is something where you have to watch and keep an eye on here. Samantha asking about Louisville, Illinois. That's south of Effingham there on 45, just outside of area. But we'd like talking about down there in places towards Flora and Albany and places like that. Got a group of college students to retreat in Atlanta and leave Sunday early. Let me bring the state map back up. And you're going to have problems, too, even into Kentucky, probably south of by the time you get to the, and I'm thinking how you would go there, Atlanta, you might be cutting over to 65 even. So here's Sunday at 9 a.m. And I can drag that out. Sunday morning, let me open it up here so I can actually edit it. It won't let me. Sunday morning, when we're looking at that system, if you're down here, you're probably going 57 to 24 to Nashville and then to Atlanta. You kind of get an idea here where Here we go. Sunday, 3 a.m., 4, 5, 6, 7. They're already having freezing rain in Kentucky and Southern Illinois at 7 a.m. And that's a problem where, to get ahead of that, you got to get out early. I mean, you may even think Saturday night, midnight, trying to get out there if you want to get there in time. And then as we go through the day, notice how once you get into, say, Clarksville, Tennessee, you should be clear. If this shifts south a little more, that is a concern. We'll keep an eye on that. But once you get down to Nashville and onward, then you should be good from that. But if you want to get out, you may think about Saturday night getting out of here, because that will be starting earlier down in Southern Illinois. We're talking 4, 5, 6 a.m. Look at that. Starting to see the first of that freezing rain. Places like Marion, Paducah, south of Evansville, kind of on the way that you would most likely go with that. So that's something where we'll keep an eye on that. Okay. Debbie's saying, nice to hear Clifton. We seem to be a forgotten area for forecasters. I love Clifton. I love Chemans. My favorite Casey's is the one off Chemans there off of 57. And I got some folks who send me pictures there all the time from up in Clifton. And so, we don't forget about you up there. But sometimes it is true when we don't talk about you. It's a good thing, right? We don't want to talk about you if we don't have to. People always ask during tornado warnings, what about my place? Well, if we're not talking about you, you're okay, right? If you hear your name on TV, your town name, that's when you got some issues and things of that. Lisa asking, the map you share concerning winter road conditions, what is the easiest way to check those road conditions? Let me see if I can pull this up, see how this works here. So I'm going to share this, and here's the tab. I think you're seeing it now, maybe. So here you go. This is our Winter Weather Center. If you go to WCIA.com/weather/winter, again, WCIA.com/weather/winter. You can also find it in the drop-down menu here. When you go to the drop-down menu, you will see Winter Weather Center pop up. When you click on that, it will take you to our Winter Weather Center. We've got those road conditions that are there ready for you. And it looks like there's been still some slick roads even this morning being reported. Parts of northern McLean, Livingston, Iroquois, Ford counties from that snow last night. And this updates really regularly. And so it's something that you can go look at for WCI.com/weather/winter. Takes you to that Winter Weather Center. We designed that for people who have to go, who need travel updates. That is for you. Okay, Julie's asking about family heading back home to Florida. Planning to leave 3 a.m. Sunday. If they're heading south, they may want to get out Saturday night, by midnight. Kind of the same idea, because you see here, 6 a.m., it's already happening. It's better to get out ahead of it, stay ahead of it, rather than to get caught. Because the worst thing is to get caught in the ice storm in Southern Illinois, and then you're kind of hopeless down there for a while. Let's see here. Serenity asking tonight. No, we got no concerns. Today, fine. Tomorrow, fine. No problems. Late Saturday night into Sunday morning after midnight, that's when we're watching the timing of that here for things. There's a lot of questions popping in. Some of you are saying, what times, what can we expect here? What can we expect there? I would love to hit every one of them. But, if you're jumping in a little late when this video posts, you can go back and watch. You can also get the latest on WCIA.com/weather. We keep that updated pretty consistently. Should we expect school closures? Big news. No school on Sunday. It's the weekend. We'll see about Monday. But I do think if some schools have Monday, that is a real consideration for that here. Kind of still scrolling through. Monday morning Indy flights. Yeah, there could definitely be some residual impacts. The question is, can you get to Indy? And the second question is, are you flying into Indy? Both of those could cause delays and whatnot. So be sure if you're flying out of the area. And let's say even, too, if you're out of Chicago, flights between there and Atlanta and a lot of these smaller towns, you have a delay somewhere that can ripple through the airline industry. And so it doesn't mean that even, places in Minneapolis, no snow up there coming Sunday, but there may be delays because of planes that have to either go around or deal with this winter weather event and figure things out. So that can be something we see that happens. Still scrolling through here, catching up. A lot of folks seeing there. And some of the questions have already been answered as I'm scrolling through. And so I don't want to spend more time. So if you're kind of catching on late, you go back and watch whatnot. Here's a good question. What are the major factors that might cause more or less freezing rain, sleet along I-70? It'll be in the 20s, upper 20s down in Effingham through most of the day Sunday. What happens, though, is at the surface, you can be cold enough for snow. But as you go higher up, there may be some warm air that gets pulled in from the south aloft. We're several thousand feet up. And if that warm air gets pulled in by the low, that is melting your snow aloft. And that can change that to either sleet if the snow particles melt partially, or freezing rain if the snow melts entirely. Once you melt the snowflake and turn it into liquid water, it's not freezing back to snow. It would fall and be freezing rain. And so that's the concern that we have. That warm air from the south is the big question with that for us. All right, Ted, so 11:38, we spent a lot of time on here. Appreciate you following, and hopefully we answered most of the questions. If you still have a question or whatnot, I'd encourage you to go back and watch this video. It'll be on my Facebook page here on our digital platforms. You can also go to our website, wcia.com/weather, and of course, keep up to date with that forecast, and we will be keeping you updated here. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back on WCIA 3 News.